Hello, everybody. Here with us, we have our last speaker of the day, Claire Venables, and Claire is going to talk about pre-primary learners.
Yes, I am. That's right.
Right. So her webinar is called Being and Belonging in the Pre-Primary Classroom. And not that she needs introductions, but let me read her bio. Claire Venables has a wide range of experience as a teacher, teacher trainer, and director of studies. However, her true passion is teaching English to pre-primary learners. So since moving to Brazil in 2011, she has been involved in the creation and implementation of language programs, teacher training courses, materials writing, and she's the director of Active English. And thank you so much, Claire, for being here with us and sharing your knowledge and your expertise, and I'm sure this is going to be amazing.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction, Thiago. It is so wonderful to be here with the BrELT community once again. I wanted to kickstart this webinar by talking a little bit about our approach to teaching children, and let me tell you why. Recently, I had to write 200 words describing my approach, and this is an exercise that I highly recommend to all of you. If you're following me on Instagram, you've probably seen it there. I shared what I wrote, and I even challenged my community to write their own description. It was such an interesting exercise because it made me reflect on the past 18 years in ELT. And I had to think right back to my early days and the journey that I've taken from pre-primary classrooms like preschools in Australia to the secondary school I worked in the UK, to Spain, where I kind of grew up as an ELT professional type of thing, and then Italy, my summers in Italy teaching, and finally my arrival in Brazil in 2011. I thought about all of the research, the people, the teaching experiences, the students that have influenced and shaped me as a professional, really. And I realized how much the industry's changed, but also how much the parents and the students have changed. Today, they come to me with like brand new expectations and needs. And so I sort of had to sit down and reflect on all of this. And then I tried to write in 200 words how I teach English to children. And you know what I realized? I realized that I don't teach language anymore. And I don't think I have for a long time now. I teach children.
It's interesting because Lucy and Fernanda today, we talked about that a lot. About it being much more than language.
Yes. This is a theme that I think that has been present throughout the Young Learner Week that BrELT's been holding, but it is something that is becoming, there's this shift in ELT towards a more holistic approach, especially to teaching children, and it's really necessary. It's a necessary change, and it was really great, Thiago, to reflect on this. And I think when I made that shift from teaching language to teaching people, I became a much better version of my professional self. I wonder if anyone who's watching can relate to this. Is there any way that people can interact? If you can relate.
There is a little delay, but they can use the chat box, and then I'm gonna read their comments to you. But I'm sure they can relate.
It would be interesting for me to know if anyone else there is on the same page as me, has made this similar kind of shift away from teaching language, away from considering yourself as an English teacher to considering yourself more as an educator. I'd really like to know that, because it's the reason I'm talking about this is because it's really important that you understand where I'm coming from with my talk today. Being and belonging in the pre-primary classroom. If you don't understand this approach that I have towards teaching English teaching people, then you might not connect with what I'm about to say, you know?
Yeah, no, the comments already started. So for instance, Vanessa Raymond, she said that's so true. I don't teach language anymore. So I think that's the feeling that many of us share. Fernanda, Danny just said, I see myself as both, but I totally go what you're saying.
Yeah, I suggest that everyone takes the time to do this exercise of sitting down and thinking about what kind of teacher they are. You know, what kind of teacher are you? If you believe your primary goal is to teach English to children, then like I said, you might not connect with what I'm going to share with you today. That's why I've taken the time to explain this. I want us to get on the same page, because for the next 40 minutes, I'm going to present ideas that really reflect my personal approach to teaching. And I'm so happy to be able to do that with my BrELT community so that we can kind of get to know each other more. And that was one of the interesting things about this exercise too, Tiago. A lot of my colleagues who I see and interact with all the time did the same exercise. Lucy did it. Oh, you have to read Lucy's.
I have.
Beautiful. But yeah. When do we share this with each other? We talk a lot about teaching, but it's very rare for us to say, well, this is how I approach it. So today it's going to be a very personal revelation about my personal philosophy and approach to teaching this particular age group. And while the end goal, like our colleague just commented, the end goal is to have my learners speaking English. But like Lucy said, I teach the whole child.
Yeah, lots of other comments here. Some people are curious to read Lucy's, and someone said it's really beyond teaching only English. Priscilla said she's been reflecting a lot about that. That's right. That's why she chose this profession in the first place. So people can definitely relate to what you're saying.
Wonderful. Let's jump into it then, shall we?
Right. So let's start with the presentation, right?
Here we go. And belonging in the pre-primary classroom. I'll let you know too, all of the photographs that you're going to see here are from my classroom and students that I've had. So these were two little students in a place that I was teaching in Vitoria, in Espírito Santo. And I love including real photographs of my students in my talks, because I am a teacher. What I'm going to share with you today is my best practice, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's move on to the next slide, shall we, Tiago? I'd really like to know who's out there to get started, so I can perhaps adjust this talk to the people who are listening here tonight. It's lovely to have you with us. In the comments, maybe you could let us know how long you've been teaching pre-primary, and if you do teach pre-primary, and how many classes a week do those students have, and if you're using a course book or not. So just let us know there in the comment box, and in a minute, Tiago's going to report back and let me know who we have here today with us. While you're responding, I'll move on and we'll have a look at what I'm going to be talking about today. Let's have a look at the session outline, Pina Colada. So in today's webinar, I'd like to first of all start off by talking to you, just taking a quick moment to talk about this idea of belonging, being and belonging, and what that means in early childhood, and also why it's so relevant to the context of language teaching in pre-primary contexts, and without a doubt beyond pre-primary as well, but I'm focusing on pre-primary. So having established this, then I'd like us to set up some new objectives for the start of the school year that go beyond what we're presented in most language curriculums. And finally, I'm going to present actionable ideas that you can use through the school year that are going to help children and their caregivers feel valued, respected, and welcome in the English classroom. So this is what we're going to be doing in this session.
Wonderful. So we have lots of comments already. Fabiana Moliterno said she's been teaching pre-primary for only a year and she has 2 classes of 15 minutes. They use a book.
2 classes of 15 minutes.
Yes, I think that's a pretty common structure for language schools, right?
15 or 50?
50.
Oh, good. Oh, phew.
No, 15 would be, imagine. Just 15 minutes to get them quiet. Vanessa said she's been teaching for over 20 years. She uses stories, and they have 2 hours of class a week. Danny says she doesn't teach pre-primary, but she wants to learn. Imagine English says they've been teaching for 2 years and a half.
I Imagine English.
Yes. Sarah says she's an ELT consultant for pre-primary, so not teaching children at the moment, but coaching teachers. She has taught pre-primary for 10 years.
I think I know which Sarah this is.
Sarah Hilliard.
Wow. Hey, hello, Sarah. So we've got a whole range of different teachers in different contexts, and with different levels of experience. But I think that there's going to be something for everyone in this session. Let's take a look at the next slide. So let's talk about belonging, shall we? I love this quote, and a lot of the information and research that I've done into this concept, actually a lot of what informs my teaching practice, comes from the early years learning framework from Australia. I started teaching here in Brazil, creating programs and implementing programs before our Brazilian national curriculum included pre-primary. So this was my point of reference. And this is a quote which really stuck with me, and I absolutely love it. I think that belonging is integral to our existence in our family. And when I say family, I'm referring to whoever that includes for you, but family, the cultural group you identify with, and your wider community. These relationships are what define us. And therefore, and especially in early childhood, they are central to forming our identity, who we are, and who we can become. And this can and must happen in our school communities as well. So here I'm going to hit you with a quote from our fellow BrELTer and an amazing educator, Raquel Oliveira, who just today was speaking at an event up in Sao Paulo about the BNCC. And she gave us this beautiful reminder, which is on my next slide. So this was a slide that I've just added today. I was in BrELT, the Facebook community, and Natalia Guerrero posted this as a roving BrELT. So how great is this resource? I wasn't at the conference, but I was able to get this gem. And she says, for those of you watching who don't speak Portuguese, she says, school does not prepare us for life. School is life. School does not prepare you for the world. It's in the world. Because no one is flung through a portal as they pass through the school gates. Now, it is so important that we remind ourselves of the incredibly important role we have as educators. We're not teaching language, we're teaching people. And if you work with learners in the early years, we play an important role in helping them develop their identities and their sense of belonging within our classrooms and beyond. So let's not forget, though, that we're also language teachers. And if you think that all of this isn't relevant for you, I invite you to think again. You see, for many children, particularly those learning a foreign language for the first time, the English language classroom can be an unfamiliar place, and that can cause fear or anxiety. And this, in turn, may have negative repercussions on a student's willingness and ability to engage in what you're trying to teach them. Tiago, do you want to jump to the next slide for me? Now, David Vail talks about this, and his article on group formation had a profound impact on my teaching. David actually quotes Krashen, and he refers to this idea of lowering the effective barriers that can impede our ability to learn. And he points out this importance of learners feeling comfortable enough with each other to take risks with the language without fear of ridicule from peers or being overcorrected from a teacher. And his emphasis on the importance of building these positive relationships between the learners is so closely connected to what my talk is about. You see, children tend to thrive in an environment and in classrooms where they feel valued and respected as individuals, as well as this sense of belonging within the group. So this tends to lead to more cooperative work, and in this kind of supportive environment, new language is actually processed within the group itself. And this facilitates the work of the teacher. Let me repeat that last word. This facilitates the work of the teacher. And who doesn't want a bit of an easier life? This is so beneficial. And I'm not just saying this from something that I've read. I promise you, when I started implementing this idea in my teaching practice, it transformed the way I taught and the way my students learned. This was enough to motivate me to rethink so many things. I began to reevaluate what my priorities should be at the start of the school year. And it also helped me set new objectives that focused first and foremost on building healthy relationships. And not only this idea of rapport between the teacher and the students, but also between the students themselves. So that was a turning point for me, definitely as a teacher. Do you want to just have a look at the next slide? Let's talk about priorities and objectives for a minute. Nowadays, when I am planning or starting a new course or starting with a new group of students, I try to make my focus firstly on building these healthy relationships. And I always plan activities, especially at the beginning, that allow for this expression of personality and uniqueness. And of course, activities that stimulate sense of fun and friendship and well-being. And anyone who's seen me in any of my workshops will probably be familiar with my ideas on fun and friendship in the Young Learner classroom. And then, of course, it also made me rethink my priorities and objectives for the use of the physical space, using this space to create this sense of belonging and ownership. That's all very well and good. It sounds great on paper, doesn't it? We've had a look at the importance and relevance of being and belonging in the language classroom, but now I'd like to spend the next, how much time have we got, Thiago?
Well, we started at 7:10, so let's have 7:50 as our goal for us to end, so maybe 20 more minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes giving you, or sharing some of the ways that I put these ideas into practice in my pre-primary classroom. And then I'd like to reserve the last 5 minutes just for us to discuss what I've talked about. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So.
Sorry, but then we're going to have more 20 minutes without questions and then more 5 for questions, okay? So no need to rush.
Well, wonderful. So let's have a look at the next slide then. The practical ideas. The practical ideas that I would like to present to you today include the use of the physical space, family involvement, starting the lesson, teaching social skills, and the teacher's toolkit. Okay, so let's jump in to the next slide and have a look first of all at the physical space. The physical space. I actually have a project called Walls Talk. And if you're familiar with Montessori or Reggio Emilia or Steiner, you'll be familiar also with the importance that these early childhood philosophies place on planned learning environments. In fact, Reggio Emilia refers to the classroom as the third teacher. The physical space plays a really important role in the learning that takes place in that classroom. And often, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it's overlooked, or it's used just for aesthetic purposes. So you want your classroom to look beautiful. You'll throw up lots of posters at the start of the year, heaps of color, filling all of that space with posters that you might get with English words on them or whatnot, or even children's work, having children's work and just displaying it on a board. But often that is it. And I believe that we can use the classroom as a way of making children feel connected to that space and to their group, and therefore to also their English classes. Having a special space in the classroom is a luxury for some who don't have their own classroom that they can use all the time, but perhaps somewhere in the school you can find a place that you can use for English. This is a great way to encourage your students to take pride in what they produce, but also it actually creates a talking point when done right. It creates a talking point for parents and caregivers who are interested in what their students are doing in class, but might not be getting that feedback that they need from their little ones. You know, try asking a 3-year-old what they did today in English class, and it's very hard to get an answer. Anyone who is a parent will know what I'm talking about. But most importantly, I think when students participate in the creation of this space, when they feel that the space is there, it does create this sense of belonging and ownership. And I think that is so, so important. So before the school year even begins, my first piece of advice is to think carefully about the way you can make the physical space feel more familiar and inviting. Anyone who's visited Lucy Crichton's school in Florianopolis, I've visited it a couple of times now, you will know it feels like you're walking into a home. And for very young learners who are not even familiar, many of them are not even familiar with this school environment, walking into an English classroom can feel really threatening. So any way that we can create some kind of familiarity in that space is wonderful. Some of the things that I do is use objects from home. I don't like a lot of plastic in my classrooms. I like using cushions that you might see in a home, rugs that you might see in a home, curtains that you might see in a home. House plants are a beautiful feature in my classroom as well. Baskets, anything like that that may be familiar to the child, I think has worked wonders for me. I also find it really important to, before the school year starts, is to invite parents, contact the parents through the school and invite them to send in photographs of the kids. There's nothing like a child walking into your classroom and on the front door they can see a photograph of themselves with a big welcome message. Photographs of their families. You can also, like I mentioned before, use wall displays as a talking point rather than just some kind of colorful display. Use that, put questions there that when parents are walking past, they can see that display and they have a question to ask their children. Sometimes parents are really interested in participating in their child's learning, but they don't know how, or they don't ask the right questions. So your wall display is a way of actually talking to parents and getting them involved and having almost like a dialogue with the parents. Another thing which I've just recently, full disclosure, recently I haven't actually tried this out with pre-primary yet, but I'm really interested in doing it. I've been talking to a lot of teachers who are using it. It's visible thinking. So visible thinking is a great way of giving yourself questions or frameworks that you can use to help you create displays that show the thought process that children are going through rather than just the end product. Something definitely worth checking out. So that is my first piece of advice on the physical space. Let's move on to the next one. Excuse me. So, very much related to what I was just talking about, this dialogue with the parents. Family involvement has been proven to be essential in creating more productive, better school environments. This homeschool link, I think, is something that I haven't done well all the time in the past, but when I got it right, it really made a difference. Having the family on board and having them feel like they belong in that classroom space as well is really important. A lot of teachers, I think, have a hard time sometimes with parents overstepping or this sort of breakdown perhaps in communication might be the real reason behind it. But I think that parents definitely have a place in the classroom. and you need to build the right kind of relationships so that involvement is healthy and productive. And one of the ways you can do this is by completely rethinking your idea of homework. In fact, I like to abandon the term homework. I want to share with you now 4 ideas that you can use as a way of educating parents on how they can get involved in their children's learning process, language learning process. The first one's called Our Class Mascot. And it's just what it sounds. We have a little mascot in our classroom, like a teddy bear or any stuffed toy. Usually it's a teddy bear. And I like to send home a picture to the parents of their child with the teddy bear in class. I then also like to let the parents know the key concepts for this project, the reason behind what it is that we're doing always, so that they know it's not just a cute picture. There is a why behind this photograph, and ask them if their child has a toy that has special sentimental value. I'll then request that they discuss this at home with their child and take a photo of it and send that photo back to me. So I'm actually getting the children talking to their parents about something at home, which is connected to the topic that we're doing in the classroom, and then getting them to bring something from home. Can you see the way, can you imagine the way how a child would feel to have something from home appearing in their classroom the very next day, and how that is a wonderful way of making this connection and this sense of belonging inside the classroom. So if possible, you can also get, because we're talking about toys that have sentimental value, I don't usually ask them to send in that particular toy, but then bringing in a different toy that the child is able to leave in that classroom for the duration of that first project is something that I highly encourage, those familiar items from home in the classroom. This has helped me a lot, especially with children, very small children who might cry at the beginning of the school year every time they have to come to English class. Having this familiar object from home is a wonderful way to get them happy and into the room. Okay, so the next one, the next idea that I have to share with you is called We Can Share. Sharing is something that children have a lot of difficulty with in the early years. Taking photographs of children sharing at school and sending them to highlight that this is a value that the children have been working on, and explaining how that they can support this process at home by looking at the photographs with their child, pointing out examples of sharing at home. And then I suggest that they send in, again, a photo of them sharing something with their child to add to a class wall display. So this also opens up opportunities for us to teach different language, just like Fernanda was talking about teaching lexis that's off the lexical list in your curriculum, but actually teaching them words from toys that they have at home, things that they have at home, and using these photos as a jump-off point for that. Send them also a link to a song. There's a song by Jack Johnson, which is fabulous, the sharing song, so that they can listen to that in the car. These are such simple ideas that you can send to the parents that won't create a lot of work for them. Something super easy, especially with mobile phones these days. It's very easy for them to take photographs and listen to music in the car. And it's so effective. So tip number 3 is let's sing. I like to send parents videos of the children singing and then encourage them to learn the song, send them the link as well to the song, and then encourage them to learn this song and sing it with their children at bath time. So bath time is a great moment. A lot of parents who bath their children have this moment, this special, intimate moment with their children that they can very feasibly start singing in English. Songs are something that a lot of parents request, and that's something, another way that you can create this homeschool link. Idea 4 is called Sneak Peek. And the idea of Sneak Peek is to send parents a partial picture of the wall display that I've been talking about. Maybe it's got artwork there, maybe it's got photographs there of what's been going on in class. Send them like just a little bit of what they might be able to see there. This will get them curious. This is like an invitation to stop by face to face, come by the classroom face to face and take a look. Get interested, get them interested in the English program. And these registers that you'll have, I call them, it's like a register of learning. These are a perfect jump-off point for them to talk to their child about what's been happening in class. But they're also a great moment for you to talk to the parents yourself. So it's not always possible. But if you can make yourself available around the time parents come to drop their children off or pick their children up and talk about what's on the wall display, talk about what you're doing, you're starting to build this relationship with the parents. You're starting to show them the magic that is happening inside those four walls. It is a window into what you do. And I think that that is something which, for me personally, made all the difference in the world to the success of the program that I was running in Espírito Santo in Vitória. Having the parents enthusiastic about the English program had positive consequences, first and foremost for the students, but also for me as a teacher. And let me tell you why. Happy parents means a happy school. And when the school was happy, it suddenly became a hell of a lot easier for me to get the materials that I requested, to get more support. It really did open up a lot of windows. And one last thing, when parents have, when you've built up what's called credit in the emotional bank account, when you've already connected with a parent, if you do need to come at any point and talk to that parent about misbehavior in the classroom from their child, they are much more open and receptive, and they see you as an ally rather than someone coming to complain about their child. So this, for me, creating this homeschool link, letting the families feel that they're involved, that they belong in that in the English program, has been absolutely revolutionary for my teaching, and I recommend doing something like this with your students where possible. It might not be possible to do all of these ideas, but don't say it's impossible. Try and think of a way that maybe you can adapt something to fit your context. Okay, that's family involvement. Let's have a look at the next tip. Okay, starting the lesson. Let me tell you about starting the lesson. Starting the lesson for me is something that is so important to everything that happens after that moment. It is a really special moment. It doesn't take very long. It doesn't happen inside the classroom. It actually takes place outside the classroom. I want you to think back to the quote that I used at the very beginning of this session when I said, people feel they belong when they feel others are genuinely interested in them and open to sharing information with them. Children want to share information with you about their lives. The wobbly tooth, their haircut, mummy's pregnant, I've got new shoes, so-and-so poked me in the eye at lunchtime. All of these kinds of things. Flamengo won the football. All of these things they are going to want to share with you. And often when you're delivering your lesson, there's not a lot of space for that. At story time, you don't want the child shouting out about their wobbly tooth, or it will come out eventually. You need to create space for those connections. And for me, it's right at the beginning of the lesson at the front door. I get down to the children's level and I connect with them individually. I let them share whatever they want with me. And obviously, at the beginning, that's in L1. They'll be sharing with me. I'll be feeding back to them in English, but I will let them get everything off their chest, and I will let them know that I see them as individuals. I will make sure that I remember things that they've told me, and I'll comment on them so that not only do they share things with me about their lives, they know that I know that about them. I show that to them by interacting with them right at the front of the door. And then we'll change our chip to English, and we'll all walk on in together chanting our special chant that we do, and we'll go and sit down ready to start the lesson. So that for me, that moment for me is sacred. And it might only take a couple of minutes, but I always make sure that it happens. A sense of being and belonging. So they're welcomed with a smile, that I connect with them. And this idea of, let me go over this idea of credit in the emotional bank account properly, because it's the second time I've mentioned it. And it doesn't actually come from education. It comes from Stephen Covey, who wrote that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he talks about this concept of needing to have credit with someone in this emotional bank account. So every time you give someone a compliment, or you connect with them, or you do something for them, or you have fun together, you're depositing credits in the emotional bank account. And with children, that's really important, because there will be times, with everyone it's important, but there will be times in your classroom when you will have cases of misbehavior, and you will have to discipline that child positively, but you will have to get down to their level and tell them off for doing something that they shouldn't have been doing in that classroom. And then you're making withdrawals from the emotional bank account. So you have to make sure that you've got enough credit in that emotional bank account so that when you do need to talk to a child or tell a child off, you're not going to damage that relationship. You're not going to go into the red. So that's what happens also at the start of the lesson. I can't, I guess everything that I'm talking to you about in this session is super, super important, but I've really highlighted the best possible things. So this actually connects very much to life skills. And I just wanted to really quickly mention life skills, because when we are greeting people, when we are talking to each other, there is so much more going on than just language. For children of the age group we're talking about, pre-primary, there are a lot of social norms involved in these kinds of interactions that they're not familiar with. So turn taking, greeting people by using their names, smiling and looking them in the eye. All of these kinds of things I think are really important, and you can use this as an opportunity when you start your lesson, as an opportunity for them to practice these types of things. And I'm going to quickly share it. How am I doing for time? I'm going to share a game with you that I use on, if not the first, maybe the second lesson. And it uses bean bags, little cloth bags that are filled with beans that are not hard, but they've got weight because of the beans. You know what bean bags are. And I get them to just play a game where they throw the bean bag back and forth between a partner or around the circle, and they greet each other in English. And this activity, this game, is delightful for them. They love throwing and catching things, so great for motor skills as well. Lots of fun, and I can encourage them to practice, explicitly practice these social skills of greeting each other. Look your friend in the eye, say hello, Chiago, smile when you do it, and they can practice this. I've got a video of this game on my Instagram account, Active English for Kids, that you can check out to see it in action. It's also embedded in the blog post that I wrote about this, so go check it out. It's a great game. The other thing that I like about this game is that you have the children interacting with each other in English. So it's almost like you're encouraging them to create this new English-speaking identity, not just with the teacher, but with each other too. And I think that's an important step to take right at the beginning of the course. Next slide. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the teacher toolkit. It's something that I'm talking a lot about lately, actually, because I've already started looking at 2019 and looking at revamping my teacher toolkit. The teacher toolkit, let's have a look at the teacher toolkit. Great, I've got some great ideas for the teacher toolkit. Do you know what it is? Your teacher toolkit is basically your plan B. It is what you need to go. It's your go-to games, songs, activities, and materials that you can use at the drop of the hat when you see things aren't going quite the way you'd like them to. You can have these materials on hand always, and you can use them in multiple ways with multiple themes at any moment of your lesson to get your kids back. And there are some specific materials that I'd like to talk to you about today that I have in my teacher toolkit that I think also can be used to help children feel like they belong in the classroom. The first one, bean bags. Then we've got calm bottles and dancing rings. I'm just going to talk about 3 today. Let's start with the bean bags. So the bean bags, as I already mentioned, can be used with this game where you throw it back and forth. They may take a little bit of time to make at the beginning, but they're going to last you for years, and they're fun, they're safe for teachers here who teach older learners as well. They're great for children of all ages, love using them, and they are so versatile. If you can't sew, there's also a no-sew version. Just look on my Pinterest account, which I can link you to, and you'll find lots of ideas for this. But the idea that I want to share with you today for using these bean bags are, well, the idea actually is the idea that my best idea for helping children feel like they belong would be using these bean bags in the way that I described, to throw them to each other and greet each other, making sure that you're paying attention to all of those wonderful social skills that you need to be teaching children of this age when they learn how to greet each other. Now, calm bottles are another thing that I introduced to my classes. Yes, I have a timeout area, but before you think what you might be thinking, it's not a timeout area as a punishment area. In fact, I need to think of a better name for this area, because it straight away makes so many people think, oh, you send children to timeout. I absolutely do not. I don't like that idea of separating a child from the group as a way of punishing them. But I do love the idea of creating a space in your classroom where if a child feels that they need to just take a moment, get comfortable, relax, and then come back to the group when they're feeling a little bit better. Some kids come to class really, really tired, and they're not up to interacting. Children in early childhood settings as well often are slowly leaving their afternoon naps that they might have had at home before they started attending school, and now they're used to having a nap. If it coincides with English class, boy, oh boy, this timeout area is a wonderful thing to have in your class. I fill mine. It's usually a piece of cloth which is draped, and they can go inside like a little cubby where you have pillows or a rug. And I use these calm bottles in this space. And calm bottles are something that I make with the children, and often they're introduced at the start of the school year, and they can be theme-based. So if you're going to be observing the weather, for example, with children, and it's a typical topic in a language curriculum, the weather, you can make weather-theme-based calm bottles with yellow pom-poms to represent the sun, maybe tiny little leaves, which when you shake up, it represents the wind. These calm bottles can be used while you're introducing the weather, but they can also be then put inside this area. And calm bottles, I don't know whether you've seen them before. I regret not including a picture of them, but they're like water bottles that are filled with water and normally clear hand soap, liquid soap, to make a sort of thicker consistency. And when you shake them up, especially if it's glitter, it's beautiful, that all spins around, and then you set that down, and the child watches all of the glitter and all of the objects that you've put inside that bottle settle to the bottom, and they calm down. Again, you can see a video of one of my students using this on my blog or on my Instagram account. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is the dancing rings, or ribbon rings also. A wooden curtain rod with long lengths of ribbon. That these are amazing. They can be used with just about any song that you like. But here's something that I like to do with my very young learners. Fridays. Let's talk about Fridays. Fridays are notoriously difficult. It's been a whole week. The kids are tired. You're tired. It can be really tricky to keep kids engaged and on task on a Friday afternoon. I like to leave or end the week on a really positive note. It doesn't have to be a Friday. It could be whatever the last day, your last classes of the week, I end this with free dancing. 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes out of your time. Let the kids choose their favorite song. For the longest time in my class, all the kids loved that song, Happy. I don't know whether you know that one. But they would choose a song. We would put it on. We would get out the dancing rings, and they would just dance and play together and shake those ribbon rings around. And it was just this beautiful moment that we could enjoy, everybody together. You know, dance like no one's watching, dance like you were a preschooler. I mean, it's just so healthy and good. And we would always end class, English class, on a high note. So they would leave class wanting to come back again the next week. So these ribbon rings are the easiest thing in the world to make. And you can have them on hand and use them in lots of different ways. And that's one way that I suggest that you use them. Yikes, I've gone over time. I apologize for that. But that was my last activity, my last suggestion. There are just a few ideas, but there are so many more things that you can do at the start of the year and all the way through the school year that are going to help children and their caregivers feel valued and respected and welcome, like they can be who they want to be and they belong in the English classroom. The concept of being and belonging is a real priority for me as an educator, and I hope I've given you some food for thought as well as practical ideas for your own pre-primary teaching practice. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Claire. I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did give them lots of food for thought.
Do you want to just switch to the next slide, Tiago?
Sure.
Might want to take a screenshot of this. This is some further reading and resources for you. These are all things that I've mentioned. You've got your early years framework from Australia. And the early years framework is called Being, Belonging and Becoming. So check that out. It is a wonderful document. And of course, the BNCC, now we do have Educação Infantil included in our national framework. And it's great to go and check out that. A lot of the concepts I've talked about today, you will find in there. This article here, New Influences on Wall Displays, is amazing, worth reading for sure. Very short, very informative. And then finally, something about teaching social skills. So teaching children to greet each other. There's a link there to another blog post that you might like to check out. And of course, on the next slide, get your phone ready to scan this QR code here, because if you are a BrELTer in Sao Paulo and you're going to be here on the 7th of December, I have got a wonderful course, the Teaching Toolkit that I have mentioned today. We are going to be making these materials and many more, 9 materials over 4 hours. You're going to leave there with a full kit, everything you need to start the new school year successfully. We're going to be making that together. And I want to offer you a big discount off that. So just until midnight tonight, you have to get in there and get that discount if you'd like to come along. So share that with your friends as well who might not have watched this, otherwise they're going to miss out. There's nothing better than a group of young learner teachers getting together and creating. And 9 activities might seem like a lot to do in 4 hours, but I have some special tricks on how that's going to happen. So get in contact if you want to find out more about that. But if you'd like to ask me or get in contact with me or follow me on social media, here are my details. On the next slide. Thank you very, very much again for having me, BrELT. It has just been an absolute pleasure to be here tonight, and your ongoing input and support and help and everything that BrELT and the community does for my own professional development, I can't thank you enough for.
And we can't thank you enough for all the input, for all the love, for all the friendship and everything. It's really amazing to count on you, as always. What a wonderful session. Lots of things to think, to digest, to put into practice. So now let's have questions. We have here, let me read. During sharing time, my students learn to take turns and wait, but during this time, they just get anxious about their talking time and don't really listen to each other. What do you suggest?
Well, what I suggest there is first and foremost that we remember that it's normal, that children, a lot of adults too, if we're perfectly honest, aren't very good at taking turns. But that doesn't mean that just because you feel that it's not working now, like that you shouldn't keep pursuing it and keep reminding them of that. Now, I do have an idea. Oh, I hope I can do this really quickly because it's kind of a complex idea. I do have something that has helped me a lot, and it is this strategy that is connected to a book called Have You Filled Your Bucket? And it is this concept that we all have a bucket that gets filled with good things and we feel happy, or bad things happen to us and the bucket gets emptied and we feel really bad. And it's a story that you can use with your children as a jump-off point for exploring this idea of how our behavior affects other people. And you can introduce a reward system for them. You can have a poster with pictures that correspond to the kind of behavior that you want to see in your classroom, like sharing, like taking turns, like listening to your friends. And you can create this reward system with them that every time you see one of these positive behaviors happening in your classroom, you can reinforce that behavior by giving them a pom-pom to put in a bucket. But here's the thing, you don't put pom-poms in your own bucket. When you do something nice for someone else, you put a pom-pom in their bucket because you're filling someone else's bucket. So this is a beautiful way that you can help positively reinforce this idea of being kind to others. It will take time. It will take time, and don't give up. If just because it's not working in January, it doesn't mean that you won't have them much better at taking turns and listening later on in the year. And that's one idea of how you can make this very abstract concept of sharing and turn taking something a little bit more concrete, something that they can touch, something that they can see.
Really good. So more questions here. From Joyce. Thank you, Claire. Really liked the emotional bank account thing. I think it is adaptable for all ages. What do you think about it?
Yeah, well, like I said, the emotional bank account came from a guy called Stephen Covey, who is actually all about sort of productivity and leadership and management. So it's applicable to everyone, absolutely everyone, that idea of that. You know, if you think about it, think about your family. Think about how your mom can say the most, you know, really, she keeps it real. My mom, at least, anyway. She's the one who, you know, calls me out about my selfies with my duck face, and she can do that because she's got a lot of credit in the emotional bank account. Whereas if you're someone who I don't even know coming up on my Facebook wall and criticizing me, then perhaps that would damage our potential relationship.
Right. So lots of compliments. Priscilla said, I simply loved the ideas. Claire, thank you so much. I'll surely change many things in my school routine. Vanessa says, it's really beautiful to see how much love you put in your work and sharing it with teachers. So Sarah says, thank you. Let me see if we have other questions.
Sarah,
I don't think we have other questions. You're just being showered with compliments, and you deserve.
And BrELT is love.
It is. It is.
And we do have a very lovely, tight-knit community, and I would love to keep connecting and talking with more teachers about this and get more ideas from them to find out what other people are doing in their classrooms. It would just mean the world to me to keep this conversation going. So do feel free to connect and reach out to me and share your ideas with me. And if you do share ideas with me, I would be really honored if I could reshare those on my social media as well, so that we can extend our ideas and our sharing to the wider ELT community.
Yeah, so remember, Claire is on Facebook and Instagram. Here we have her website, activeenglish.com.br, her email address, so you can connect with her in many different ways. And the certificates. For you to get your certificate, you have to be very quick. Go to bit.ly. Ly is Ly. BrELT YLT Week 2018 certificate. I just pasted the link in the comments for you to go there and get your certificate. So again, thank you, Claire, so much. Thank you, everyone. And tomorrow we are going to have more sessions. We're going to have something about storytelling, puppetry. We're going to have something about writing, adapting, and assessing activities for young learners. So don't miss our Young Learners and Teens Week. Thank you very much. Thank you, Claire, and see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.